I wanted my time when I was in the business to be as impactful as possible, stepping away, how much of a leader I would have to grow as. And the bigger thing, those things, and then developing my process so that we could coach and audit through the different failures that we had along the way. Like everything is always a constant work in process. The other one doesn't know about it yet, but it's learning through all the failures.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of the Lift Your Shop podcast. I'm Kelsey Alsh from the Lift Auto Repair Marketing. And today we have an amazing guest. We have Josh Bird from Bird Automotive based in the Missouri area, Blue Springs and Oak Grove to be specific. But Josh, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. So I know we're gonna dive into obviously a bunch of different things in regards to what I would say is things that you're passionate about, obviously. But before we jump into some of those things, tell us a little about your story, how you got involved in automotive and kind of where it's taking you up to today.
My story, like I was the teenage kid that loved working on cars. Every day after school, that's what I was doing. So once I graduated high school, I went through the GM ASEP program. Started at a dealership right out of high school, Porter, went through the GM ASEP program, ended up becoming, graduating from there and then becoming a GM Master Tech. Somewhere around 2012 or 13, I got into the management side of the dealership, which was a lot of fun. Ran the recon facility of a large dealer group here in Kansas City. We would, it was 20, 25 employees on any given day for just the reconditioning facility.
Mm-hmm.
Then we ended up going forward. We opened another new dealership. I opened that as the service manager. And I kind of got, I think a lot of independent shop owners can relate that do come from the dealership world. I just kind of got burned out and needed to go a different direction. Wasn't really planning on ever having my own shop. My dad was a home builder growing up, so I wanted no part of owning my own business growing up around it. So it's the craziest thing. I wanted to go be a technician. That's all I ever wanted. A few years in, I decided, management may be a thing to try. So I walked away from a pretty decent job and started turning wrenches out of the pole barn behind the house. One lift, 10-foot ceilings, and it was just me and myself for almost a year. We brought on our first employee in 2000. So we opened in June of 18, April of 2019. We brought on our first employee.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting bringing this employee on because he was someone I had apprenticed before, and the way
Okay.
the interview worked is he called me and he's like, either I'm going to work for you or I'm going to work for this other company. So like I had no plans on bringing an employee on yet, and my wife and I discussed it, and it's like, well, see if we can make it work. So we brought him on and we continued to grow. We ended up moving into an actual commercial location in January of 21. I think we purchased 3 or 4 lifts plus an alignment rack. We had 4 of us that we hired, and we went into there with 4 employees. We now currently have 10 there. So that was January of 21. We ended up opening our second location about 15 minutes away in June of 23. And I think we've got 9 employees there now. So it's been quite the journey in a fairly short amount of time. I've been in this industry for going on 22 years. Just we're going on 6 years of being in business for ourselves. So having to learn to manage and navigate a lot of things, becoming the leader that I needed to be for 20 some people it's quite a monumental task, it seems at times.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, juggling all the personalities and emotions and things that comes with it. I know it's quite the journey, and I'm curious in terms of like how what was kind of the biggest thing that you learned in the very beginning? Because obviously I know you learned a lot. So obviously, as you continue to be a leader, you learn every day. But like in the very beginning and in that journey as you're growing, what was kind of the biggest thing you realized like maybe you struggled at, you need to learn right away, or you noticed that like, yeah, this I need to be really good at doing this thing.
Um, so I will say, like, I started my own business. I would consider it to be unique from a lot of other people that are in our industry. I started the auto repair shop to be a business owner. I did not start it to work on cars for the rest of my life because I love to do it.
Mm,
Um, what I started to find very early on, my biggest fear is being a technician in a shop at the house is great. It has a ton of freedom. There's a lot of plus sides to it. My biggest fear that I had is I get injured and all of a sudden my family is done for, so to speak,
mm.
because there's no backup plan. So through there we started to grow, and it, I don't know. It's people. I mean, it's almost touche. Everyone says it. You know, we're in the people business and we happen to repair cars, but it's so true. You know, whether it's with the employees or the customers, from the very beginning, we've just always been very open and transparent on both ends of that spectrum, and I think it's worked very well for us.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so in terms of how quickly did you feel like you needed to like obviously like when you're starting the business, you're hands-on, you're working with the customers all the time. And then I feel like a transition as you grow starts to happen where like you're not as involved with the customers anymore. Like the employees in a sense are your customers as the owner that you're constantly trying to make sure are happy. So when do you feel like that transition sort of started taking place?
That transition for us sorted sort of started to take place, I would say, let's see, 21, probably spring of 22. We put a manager in place. Up until then, I had been the manager. I was still very involved. So spring of 22, we put a manager in place. I went to a shop owners conference, shop hackers, August of 22, and I made the decision. We were in that phase of we felt like we were ready to maybe start looking for a second location.
Mhm.
And I made the decision to not go back to the shop for 4 weeks after that conference. So I was only in the shop a few hours over the course of a 5 week period. What's interesting about that, as far as from like a shop owner's side, I was the person for everything.
Mm.
And in that 4 or 5 week period, all of a sudden they started to do things better than it was when I was there. Uh, so it's a hard thing to deal with. It's, I would say, almost a borderline depression type thing you go into because you're not needed.
Mm.
Um, so there was a lot of training that went up to that, and a lot of leadership type things, and allowing people to take on responsibility and then fail and then coach through that and then do it again. We had years of that with employees, and then a manager that, we still to this day continue to do that. They fail at things and we learn from it and we coach through and we go forward. I fail at things and I learn from it, coach through it, and go forward.
Yeah, no, for sure. So they did, and that's crazy that you kind of just ripped off the band-aid in the sense of like, oh no, you know what? I'm just not gonna go in there and to see how it plays. But did you place certain people in charge that you feel like could handle it, or was it kind of like, no, I mean the right people will rise to the top, and then that's kind of how it would happen.
It's so spring of 23, March, I think it was March, about this time of year, we put a manager in place.
Mm,
So from March to August, I would take, like, this meeting like you and I are doing. I would take these meetings and I might turn them into a 2 or 3 hour away from the shop type thing.
oh,
So
okay.
I slowly started incrementally kind of stepping out of the shop and just kind of seeing what would happen. And then we could course correct or coach through things as I went back in. But it wasn't just the one day I woke up and I'm like, I'm not going. It was a process to get
Yeah,
there to
okay,
where I felt
gotcha.
like they were ready. The crazy thing was when I did finally step away is how much they all did step to the occasion. I mean,
Mm.
I don't know that they stepped to the occasion. They were already doing it. I just had to have trust that they would do it when I wasn't there, and they did.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's a big step in terms of trust of like, hey, I'm not there, and like I can't like there's not that visual accountability of you yourself also seeing said things taking place. And it's
Mm-hmm.
one thing to see it and versus, hey, is it happening? And so obviously you mentioned people they're going to make mistakes throughout this process, and that's
Absolutely.
absolutely normal. But I think one thing I hear from people that maybe like have that scare of stepping away is like how do I know what mistakes they're making, and then how do we then fix the mistakes if I'm away? So like what is that? How did you, I guess, how did you figure out the mistakes? Do they let you know? Do you just figure out it through the numbers of like, oh no, this is where it's trending wrong? Or like, let's talk through that a little bit.
So some of it's you don't know what you don't know. There's a lot of different resources out there that um, they're KPIs that your shop should be hitting. And before you ever step away, you should know what those KPIs are. So that's where the numbers that will easily tell you.
Hmm.
The other side of it is like you're gonna probably get some bad reviews and some stuff like that in that process. And it's figuring out where the breakdown was.
Hmm.
Nobody intentionally does bad service for a customer that's coming in. There's something else in the process that's broken down. So, like, I've had to grow what I didn't realize is stepping away, how much of a leader I would have to grow as. Um, but it's learning those things and then developing my process so that we could coach and audit through the different failures that we had along the way. And the bigger thing, coaching through all the failures, the biggest thing that I've realized is how horrible most of us are at giving compliments to our team whenever they do well. So that's been a really big thing that, and I didn't really catch on to that until we went into store two. Like I thought we had our processes down. We went into store two and they're not bad, but there's so much room for improvement. And what I've been finding, and this is, I've always been told this, I've always been trained this, but you have to give the attaboys for all the negative stuff that you do. 5 for every one negative. But I wasn't good at it. So it's finding ways to intentionally be good at giving those, hey, you did good on this, you turned this around, things like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a great point. And like, I know it's something that I know I personally struggle with within our business, especially we're 100% remote. And so like giving that visual attaboy at times is difficult to be able to do because really making sure we carve out the time. And I mean, and it was one of my employees that came with a great idea. Just like, let's create a Slack channel of just like, they just called it, he said, we call it high fives. And just like people will just then share wins
Mm-hmm.
and amazing things that the team did during that day. And is it really cool to like I'll go through and read them like my goodness it's like it's amazing all the little things that the team is doing without me even knowing it's there too. And so I think that's such a great point. So how obviously like you mentioned it's not natural for people at times like they just like oh like, you expect them to do their job good like so like in the beginning to break it down like did you like have to like create like a goal or like you're just like I need to say this many compliments per day or like, did it I guess well what was your process to kind of figure
Well,
that
like I've gotten where if I notice something, I'll tell someone a good job. But
out?
what I've been really working on doing here of late the last several months is if I have a conversation with someone and maybe it's a tech that needs to get their hours up or their tech average quote or an advisor needs to get their gross profit per hour up, but I'll put a task on my calendar for 5 days, whatever our timeline was that they said they were going to correct it. Because that's
Mhm.
the thing I always ask them: what time frame do you think you need to get this resolved and get us back to our minimum expectation? Whatever they tell me, I'm good with it within reason. Typically, it's about a week, but in that week, I'll put that task on my calendar. And in that week, that gives me one of two options: either follow back up because they haven't done it, or two, follow back up and say, hey, great job. You got that turned around. I really appreciate it.
Mm.
And I think so many times we miss that little piece of it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's such a it's a great useful idea. So yeah, again, those that are listening, I'll make sure that you're taking notes a little bit on just doing the little things that goes a long way when you're managing a team and becoming that true leader. Like people need those compliments. Like it helps. You can see visually in their just face, their
Mm-hmm.
expressions, like how much it changes when you just tell them a little thing of positivity that they're like, okay, my boss notices. Like they know that what I'm doing is good and valuable work. So
And we do, so something that my wife started with our onboarding process is we do what's called a favorite sheet.
mhm.
So it's basically a sheet that has their favorite stuff on it. Like where would they like a gift card, a type of candy bar, a coffee, a drink, whatever. And there are times that just out of the blue, we'll go on and buy stuff off of that sheet and bring it in and give it to them. And all of a sudden, you've got a shop of 10 people that have their favorite candy bar sitting on their toolbox. It's little acknowledgement stuff like that that's like, hey, we appreciate you.
Yeah, 100%. And then we do the same exact thing within our onboarding. Is like yeah, just all the like, and even as a one-off, like maybe a question of a favorite that they don't even think about doing. So you never know when when that time comes that like you can even relate to them on that thing. Maybe you took the effort, like it was a TV show that they love, and you're like you never even heard of it. You're like, what even is this? And but
Right.
you took the time to research it a little bit, and then you're like, you know what, this is actually pretty good. Or maybe if it wasn't good at all, it doesn't matter. You took that time, you had a good conversation, and like that solidified that relationship with them, like in your shop, and they're now ingrained. They're like, I love where I work, and how much easier is it to keep someone that's there than this to then worry about hiring someone new because they're not happy there. So I think these little things can go such a long way with it's improving overall culture. So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, definitely a great idea. So I know now, obviously, as you're growing and in different shops, there's so many people pulling you in different directions, I'm sure. And you're just like, you can't obviously be in both shops at the same time, let alone maybe you're not in either shop ever. And so like that there's certain delegation and time management processes that you do. And so I would love to dive into like how you are able to properly like kind of manage your time, because I know there's only so much of it in a day. So how do you go about doing that?
A lot of ours, kind of the first thing that I do is it something that I really need to touch? There's different problems for different levels of employees, and like for me, I probably don't need to be planting flowers in front of the shops for the spring type stuff. There's a GES, or we can hire a company, something along those lines. So I do things that are, comparable to what my value is and what my value is to the company. Not that I think I'm overly important, but at the same time, I don't need to be sweeping the floor in the shop. There's things that are much more pressing, much more important
Mm,
that most shop owners can be doing. Um, and I give our managers, they have a ton of, like, it's kind of their own. Each shop is kind of their own business. Um, we've got it set up to where each shop can set up their own accounts. It has to go through our accounting process, but they have all the stuff where they set the accounts up on site. Payroll, each manager, they do payroll on site, and then they submit it to the accounting office for it to get finished. So a lot of ours boils down to we pay accordingly, but we give those managers that responsibility and ownership, and then they're paid as such as well. If their shop's profitable, they make more money, obviously.
oh, very, very interesting. I mean, that's a lot of trust, obviously, to delegate things that are in regards to financials and payment. But is it just something that you've found has been a super value add in terms of like obviously saving time on that end, or just like is it like a coaching thing, or it's like it is something that I want them to learn?
Something I want them to learn. Like we're very open with the numbers,
Mm,
with all of our staff, more so with even the managers. But it allows, I don't really know how to explain it, but it's really hard, in my opinion, it's really hard to coach or train somebody to go, hey, we want you to do 200K a month. The issue with a lot of employees is they think if you make 200,000 in a month that you put $195,000 in your pocket. Everyone on this call knows that there's shops out there doing $500,000 a month that are losing money. I mean, it's sad, but it's true. Just because that top number, that big sales number, doesn't honestly mean anything. It's the bottom number, the net number, is what really drives what we're trying to accomplish. So I want them to be involved in it, and I want them to realize how expensive and how much responsibility we have as a business to our employees and our customers. So, like, our managers know if we start having issues with retention, employee retention or customer retention, our marketing expense is going to go up, and so is our hiring expense, which is going to decrease what they're going to make.
gotcha. No, and that's I love the transparency again. That's so big within a business, and obviously, yes, people are probably listening to this and like, there's no chance I could share the numbers with my team this way. But maybe if you took a leap of faith and built that trust, great. But if there's people on your team, obviously, that you feel like I don't think I can trust them, then that's a clear call answer because of what probably needs to be done in the very near future. Because you need to have a team that you can trust to be able to operate in the highest level, especially without you being there. Because obviously emergencies and things happen, you can't always be there to be the only person to answer all the questions. So yeah, no, that's definitely a great, fantastic suggestion there. And so then in terms of again on the time process, so for obviously, I mean, I know you kind of drill out different ways in terms of time management, but for like some of your managers and things like maybe like I'm assuming that maybe they were the best at time management already, but I assume most people are not. And so is this there was there a level of time management needed to teach the managers? And if so, what did that process look like?
They're they're both pretty decent with it
Uh-huh.
already naturally. So there's like we're in the process right now of implementing. One manager is aware of it, the other one, like everything is always a constant work in process. The other one doesn't know about it yet. We're in the
Uh-huh.
like we just kind of started this here in the last 2 weeks, but it's creating a schedule for them of things that have to be handled on a daily basis, things that have to be handled on a weekly basis, and then a monthly basis, so that they have very clear expectations. uh, I guess that's probably the biggest thing for them with time management side of it is just very clear expectations of what has to be accomplished on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Um, as we've gone to 2 stores, now we're working on doing everything we can to make them as similar as we can.
Mhm.
And that's where the sheet comes in because both managers were accomplishing the same thing at the end of the month and getting everything done that they needed to, but one was going around the mountain, one was going over the mountain.
Uh-huh.
And we're trying to create the same experience for both the employees and the customers, no matter which store they go to. So, where the experience was very similar, it was still different.
Gotcha.
So, that's where now we're working on this sheet, which is helping them with the time management of what they need to get done on a daily basis. We do a daily morning huddle. So,
Mhm.
this is some of their time management. And I kind of put up guardrails for them. As long as they stay within those guardrails, I'm pretty good.
Mhm.
But we do have some things that have to happen no matter what, regardless. We do a morning meeting with every team member. The manager starts every morning. Our morning huddle at 7:45 to get the day going, and then they have one store has 3 advisors, the other one has 2 advisors. Every day at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., they do a front of house huddle to go over cars, make sure what's we said is going to get done that day is going to get done. If it's not going to get done at 2 o'clock, we can start making the phone calls so that the customer's not surprised at 4 or 5 o'clock that night. And then they also do a monthly meeting with all the staff members that is going to be on. That one varies. That one can be anything from an HR safety meeting to numbers to, we've got techs we're involved in tech fix. And we've got guys that are retraining or train the trainer type things, but we've got techs that actually enjoy doing the training of the rest of the staff. So we allow them to do it through those meetings as well.
Okay. And then for you yourself, how often are you having to meet with the manager? Like, I mean, I'm assuming you're checking on these like the daily and weekly things that they're doing, and then obviously then the monthly thing. Like, how often are you need to check in on these things?
We do a formal meeting, and it's through a Zoom call or Google Meets call
Mhm.
every Tuesday at 12:30, and it's for typically 30 minutes to an hour. Typically an hour. The last week of the month, I typically let them off with a 30-minute meeting because they're
Uh-huh.
always, I don't know, it's the last week of the month. No matter how you try, how hard you try and make it the same as every other week, it's always a lot harder.
Yep.
So, so that's kind of there. And then I'm in the stores really a few hours a couple times a week. I'm probably total in the stores, maybe a total of 8 hours a week. And that kind of changes with the need. We're working on some things now. We do have several new hires as we've grown and added some people.
Mhm.
So here in the coming month or so, I'm going to be spending a little more time in there. Not so much coaching managers, but just doing training in general. just because we do have quite a few new people.
Gotcha. And I guess in terms of these trainings, like, did you go about creating these processes? Did some of your managers create these processes? And yeah, I guess I'll leave it there.
It's
How the process creation work?
it's a little of both.
Oh.
There's like for example, our managers meeting. I'm not in the shop every day anymore. I got the bright idea that it'd be a great time at 10 a.m. on Monday mornings to do our managers meeting. I lasted about 3 weeks, and they're like, "Hey, this doesn't work." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember what 10 a.m. on Mondays is like." So we moved it to Tuesdays at lunch whenever, that's basically when both of the managers go to lunch, but they chose that they wanted to do the lunch meeting at their lunchtime for both of them
Mhm.
so that they didn't miss out on anything in the shop.
Okay, yeah, gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. And so, I mean, that growth, I think, naturally happens when you have that accountability each and every week, and meeting with them. And but in terms of, I mean, obviously, as they go through goals, and they won't always hit them. And so now it's about that course correction. I think is so intricate. And so, how do you go about kind of helping that course correction as you're seeing that, hey, yeah, this week they fell short. Okay, this next week they fell short again. Like, what can be done to course correct?
On the course correct side, so it's really simple to say, "Hey, you didn't hit this number, make it better." And typically, most of them are going to give, "Okay, I'll fix it for next week." But ask the person, "How are you going to fix it?" It's not a simple, "I'll make it better." If your car count's low and you didn't touch as many cars as you're supposed to as an advisor, okay, how do you make your car count better? Like, as I can look at the backside of it and I can see how many phone calls we're getting in, I can see how many clicks we're getting on Google, all of that. So, marketing's my job. If I can make the phone ring, it's your job to get them over the curb.
Mhm.
So, how are you going to fix it? And it's coaching it out of them that, is now a good time or is there a time that works better for you? Scheduling that customer out 3 or 4 days isn't the answer, but it's allowing them to come up with the answer and then allows them to go ahead and fix it.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, no, that's awesome. And now I wanted to dive a little bit more into time management. And obviously, we met a week ago or so, and you
Mm-hmm.
had a class on time management. There's a certain method that, of course, now I'm not even remembering what it's called. And so, like, if you could talk about like that certain method and how that has helped in terms of time management and your abilities there.
So for if this is we'll see if this is part of that. So we'll see if this is what you were thinking of. And there's another part, we'll go into that in a little bit.
Hmm.
So I'll basically break down each thing that comes in front of me. I break it down into one of four things, and it's a split second decision. It's one is um, like this doesn't need anybody's attention because we all have those things that come through the shop that need nobody's attention or maybe a GS or something along those. So that's one category. The next category is can be delegated, but will need my attention at some point. So those are things that the manager can take on, but they're going to need my involvement at some point throughout. So our managers, they can pretty well spend up to $1,000 without questioning anything.
Hmm.
They, like it affects their pay same as it does mine at the end of the day. So up to $1,000, they can pretty well spend whatever they need to on the shop. If it starts to get over that, then we'll have the conversation on what's your ROI on it, things of that nature. Do we really need it? How many times do we use it? So that's the category of can be delegated, will need my time at some point.
Hmm.
And then the next part is going to be can be delegated, won't need my time. So it's something that I can pass off and uh, cleaning windows, sweeping the floor, pulling the weeds in the back lot. All of those things are things that can be delegated to somebody that you might have to walk by and just make sure they're doing it, but it doesn't take any more of your time. And then the last area is it can't be delegated, and I've basically got to handle it start to finish. So those would be things like, you know, dealing with the marketing company stuff because that is the marketing is my side on the back side. I deal with all of that. I take the feedback from the shops if they have any.
Mhm.
But the marketing side, I basically do all of that. If we're looking at buying another location, that's something that any owner is going to deal with start to finish. We added loaner cars. I'm not going to task any of our managers with dealing with that type of situation. There's too much involved in it. Um, Hiring A level players, that's something that I do. Hiring GS and C level players, maybe B level and players. Basically, the managers can handle that with little to no input from me.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
those are kind of my four categories that I break things down into.
And like, so why did you come up with these categories?
Because I was wasting a lot of time on tasks that one would have more impact on the business if someone else did it. Because
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that we may do as an owner and we think this is the best way to do it, like having a meeting at 10 a.m. on Monday, and somebody else has a better way to do it, or go pull weeds in the back lot for 2 hours. What could you have done that would have actually impacted the numbers or the people in your business had you not gone and pulled weeds for 2 hours in the back parking lot? So I just wanted my time when I was in the business to be as impactful as possible so that when it wasn't work time, not that we ever as entrepreneurs get fully away from it, but when I was with my family, I could be with my family and I wasn't worried about all this other stuff.
Mm. Yeah, that balance is so tricky to be able to do. But I think, but based on the method that you've had, I mean, that really helps understand. And like, if you start seeing yourself, like I would recommend everyone kind of write these things out and break it into these sections. And if
Mm-hmm.
you start seeing there's a big list of can't delegate on there, I guarantee there's things that you can figure out a way to delegate, or again, teaching your manager how to like do this certain piece that you thought, you know what? I thought I could never delegate this before, but I'm going to try it.
Our payroll is a really good example.
Mhm.
Once doing payroll is super simple when you're there every day because you see people coming and going. I've yet to have a full staff anywhere. And see, I've been in the management side of things, even at the dealership till now for 10 or 15 years. But I've yet to have a full staff anywhere that could clock in and out properly every single week, every single person. When you're there every day, it's not that big a deal because you remember that Johnny missed clocking in or out at lunch or didn't clock in, or you just know their habits. And now, if you're not there and you didn't hire the person, you're like, were they there? Were they not there? And what I found myself, like, I was trying to do payroll, and then I'm going and looking at cameras to figure out whether they were or were not there because the time clock said they weren't there. And I was spending like 4 or 5 hours doing payroll for 20 employees.
Mm.
I was like, this is ridiculous. So I talked to the managers about it and basically let them have it. They were perfectly fine with it. It allowed them to see their flag hour text, what they were flagging. It put it in front of them, like not just looking at it, but they had to write down what they were doing on a weekly basis. But they can knock out payroll for each of their stores in 30 or 40 minutes. They can send it to me. We spot check it and we can do payroll. I do payroll. It's typically a 20, 30-minute process now for 20 or 25 employees.
Yeah, and as you can see, that's an amazing delegation of time that you're now
Mm-hmm.
getting back. Whereas before, yeah, just when you think you can do it yourself and you're not asking for anyone else for help, but it's like that wheel just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning. There's an
So
end.
when I was doing it, it took that total process. It was a 4 or 5 hour process because I wasn't there every day. Now combined with three people doing it, just because we've got the right people doing it,
Yeah,
it's an hour and a half total time. So
yeah,
it's not only did it save me time, it saved us as a company time on
yeah.
something that payroll is one of the most important things you can do. You screw that up and you don't have employees, but it's not something that actually makes the company money.
No, no, exactly. It's an administrative task, and they're obviously not the most fun task to be able to do, but very, very important in terms of ensuring that the company can continue to function. Because yeah, like you mentioned,
Yes.
if payroll's not right, ain't nobody coming back.
No.
They're like, oh, if I'm not getting paid, I'm not coming here. And so you need to make sure that that process is unlocked, and yeah, having extra people especially people that you can trust in management, to handle that. I think it's a very, very smart and wise decision to be able to do. So thank you for sharing that. But and then the method that I was thinking, like, it started, I think it started with a P. The
The
name.
the Pomodoro technique.
Yes, that was the one that I wanted to also dive into a little bit more, and what exactly that was and how it kind of applies to everything that we've been talking about so far.
So we're in a world that we're easily distracted by things. I mean, we
Mm.
have things constantly in our face. What the Pomodoro technique is, and it's something, in all honesty, I stumbled across it one night. I don't even know how, but I decided to put it to practice, and it surprised me at how well it worked. But it's basically a 25-minute stint of just working with no distractions. At the end of that, you take a 5 to 15 minute break. And if you're at the shop, you close your door in your office, put your phone on silent, turn it upside down, and get it out of your hands reach. But you work for that 25 minutes or so. At the end of that, then you go walk around, do whatever, get distracted for the next 5 to 15 minutes, and then you do it again. Um, Typically, it's something that's depending on how long the task is, but it's an hour to a 4 hour deal, but you can get so much accomplished. You don't realize how much you can get accomplished until you sit down and do 25 minutes of undistracted work. Because we've all had it where we've sat down to do a project and it's the end of the day and you've got like a half a paragraph written on something that you're needing to accomplish. And you're like, how did this take all day? So
Yeah, the same sort of thing happens to me when you check through your email. It's like, oh yeah, oh, this is a task I need to do, and you start working on that task, and then oh well, you get a message from someone else on the team like, oh, this came up, and then oh, you pivot, you go to that task, and then next thing you know, you look back at it, you're like, I didn't complete any of the tasks that I wanted to get done today,
yeah,
and I think it's a very good, a very valuable technique, especially in time management, as we've kind of been drilling on so much with today as we've been talking. Like, there's so much efficiency that can be naturally built in that people don't give themselves credit for. They always just think, well, nah, like our shop is different, and it's just way too busy. There's no way one person can do all this, but really. Like, there's so much time waste in this day and age, especially because of our silly little phones that we can do everything on now these days. You get so distracted so quickly. So yeah, I think it's a very valuable technique to be able to accomplish. Is it something that you also apply to, like, have you talked to managers about it and seeing if there's different ways that they can apply it too, or is it just something that as an owner you found really, really valuable?
it's just something that I've done as an owner. Because it really, for me, and the managers can probably use it too. I just haven't, you know, coached them or showed them, whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. Um, but it's getting into those bigger projects that just they take that intentional thought process, um, and that's where I use it on those types of things, whether it's month end stuff or tax stuff or there's so many things that it applies to trying to figure out. We just went through open enrollment, so we were having to go through all the different insurance options,
Oh,
and insurance option, like, you have to be very intentional as you're going through those items and comparing them, and you don't want to be distracted in those types of decisions because it can affect not only you but all of your staff.
100%. And insurance, that stuff is the worst. I'm not gonna lie. Like, that, dealing with all that stuff, like, I wish there was just a way easier button that could be pressed to magically make it be like, yep, this is the best fun for your team, what you have going on. But unfortunately, that's not how it is. A lot more time goes into that than I think people realize as you continue to offer those kind of things. But yeah, definitely. I'm curious in terms of, as when you got the second shop. So obviously now, like, there's two different places in the sense that people feel like I need to be. So
Mm-hmm.
how did you go about, like, delineating that time and, like, balancing out, like, oh, does more need to be invested in the new one just because it's the new one and the old one you're trusting? Or is it like, no, that can't be the way it needs, it needs to be pretty even? Like, what does that process sort of look like?
So when we went to store two, we intentionally went to store two. We pulled one person out of store one, and he was a GS that was going to work his way to be an advisor. We intentionally did not touch any of the staff at store one just because we knew how it would operate basically day in, day out, no matter what. So we left store one alone and went to store two. My intention going into store two was like I would be on the front counter um, for the next 60 to 90 days. We were fortunate. Marcus is who runs that store, and we were fortunate that he's very talented at what he does. And we were fortunate that literally 2 or 3 weeks in, like he was all but killing himself, even though I was there. And it was funny. I'm like, Marcus, let me help you. And he's like, no, you have owner things you need to do. That you told me this is my store. This is my store. You go do what you have to do, and I'll do this. So the Riley, the GS that we had moved over, we went ahead and moved him up so Marcus had some help. And then from there, basically, I just started bouncing back and forth, and I was at each store. One I would do morning, the other one afternoon, and then flip flop them. And then we've grown. And then about the first of the year is whenever I really started to pull out of being there on a daily basis. And now when I stop by, it's for a few hours, or like I enjoy doing the staff meetings. If we cook for the team, servant leadership type stuff, I enjoy doing all of that type of stuff. So we got cookouts at both of the stores next week that I'll end up cooking for both of those.
Well, what are you cooking?
I think the second store they're getting steak. They had a record month last month, so
Oh, very nice. What kind of steaks we talking here? Are we smoking them? Are we grilling them?
we'll
What's
we'll
got
be
going on?
grilling them. So we
Okay.
haven't picked them out of the meat case yet, but they'll be something good.
Okay, okay, very nice, very nice. Well, again, thank you so much, Josh, for the insights that you provided for us today. I really hope that those listening like took something valuable out of it. If anything, I think sitting down and the simple task of just like writing down what you believe you're doing on a daily basis can go a long way in determining if you should still be doing that thing today. Like just right again, like should I have done that today? Like, or should I have given that away? I think something simple like that will help still at that time. But Josh, I always like to leave people with a bit of a book recommendation. So if there's a book out there that you think, yeah, this book I've read has been monumental in helping me as a shop owner, but what would that book be?
Um, I would say leading with love. He was the CEO for Silver Dollar City,
Hmm.
uh, but it has a lot to do with the servant leadership, and you don't necessarily have to be that mean boss to accomplish the things and the greatness that you want to accomplish within your organization.
I love that because again, yeah, I mean, obviously you need to have a stern hand at times. Like people can't feel like they can just walk over you as an owner, but yeah, that servant leadership goes such a long way when people just feel like you're there to listen, there to serve them, and that's who they want to follow, like who they want to support and be happy supporting. So yeah, I love that recommendation. I've never read the book, so yeah, I can add it to my list of books that I need to read. But yeah, thank you for the recommendation. And for those that possibly want to reach out to you to say they have questions about, okay, Josh, this is my time. This is what it looks like, and I need help. What would be the best ways for me to reach out to you?
They can shoot me an email. Josh at birdautorepair.com is probably the easiest. Um, the last thing, people are always worried about their schedule, and I think the biggest misconception of time management is that like everything has to be on this timeline, and I start at noon, and then I do this at 1, and it's not. We all have very important things that need to be accomplished. For me, it's those meetings because that's what drives everything else. So, like, I know the manager's meeting is at this time. I know the front of house meeting is at this time, but it's having those which opens up that middle time to where, like, I have more like blocks of this is what I'm going to accomplish in this blocks. I don't do my calendar is not a very structured, this is what it is. Um, you have to have some flexibility there. I tried to do I'm going to do this 12:30 to 1:30 and this 1:30 to 2:30. And guess what? I didn't do it because I didn't like it.
Yep.
So I figured out the things that were important, and those happen absolutely no matter what. And then everything else we can work in around that. And that's how I do it. It's simple.
Yeah, and obviously Josh is making it sound way simpler at times. For I'm sure someone else is like, Josh is not this simple. You should see my calendar. But again, it can be though. I think that's the light in the tunnel for everyone here is that your schedule. Yeah, like you mentioned, it does not have to be this exact agenda. I mean, some people work better that way, and that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like they make list it out that way. But I'm similar to yourself, where it's like, yeah, I kind of as I have certain things I know I need to get done that day, and those are the things I'm getting done no matter what. And the other things are just, yeah, they'll fill in as it goes along. Obviously, if an employee needs me, absolutely go out of my way to support them. But for the most part, like today, this is what I'm getting done, and I cannot be bothered until those things are done. After that, whatever people need, I'll do, kind of deal. So
My
perfect.
I'm the way, if I put everything on the calendar and block it out with exact like half hour increments, like I don't get anything done. I don't. But if I start the day with this is what I'm going to get done today, knowing that I have a few things in there that have to happen each day, then it all gets done.
Exactly. Yeah, it creates that intention, and so I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the importance of each and every day. But again, thank you so much, Josh, for
My
being with
pleasure.
us today. Thank you for all the insights you've shared. For those that are with us, again, if you haven't liked or subscribed already, please do so. But again, we'll talk to you all next time. Catch you later. See you guys later. Bye.